So in this video, I want to react and comment on Secretary Pete Hegseth's address to NATO. It was, I think, the first speech he made as Secretary of Defense, and I think it sets the tone for what the new administration has in store for this alliance, and I think it's a harbinger of what's to come. So I want us to watch it together and just to think about what's being said, what's being not said, and yeah, let's just get into it.
And before we're talking about what we've done at the ministerial, I want to reaffirm a few things from this podium. First, as we see it, NATO's strategic objectives are to prevent great power conflict in Europe, deter nuclear and non-nuclear aggression, and defeat threats to treaty allies should deterrence fail. Second, the U.S. is committed to building a stronger, more lethal NATO. However, we must ensure that European and Canadian commitment to Article 3 of this treaty is just as strong. Article 3 says that allies, and I quote, by means of continuous and effective self-help and mutual aid, will maintain and develop their individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. Leaders of our European allies should take primary responsibility for defense of the continent, which means security ownership by all allies, guided by a clear understanding of strategic realities, and it's an imperative given the strategic realities that we face.
So right there, I think it's clear that the United States wants to hand off the security of Europe to Europeans, right? I wonder how feasible that is, given the productive capacity defense-wise of Europe collectively and individually, right? Because it's not just that you have a factory that produces weapon systems, it's that you have to secure resources for it. And the primary resources obviously are in a lot of developing countries that don't have that friendly relations with Europe, right? It's just, I think, yeah, well, it's on a case-by-case basis. We'll get into it in another video. And if you guys recall, one of the things that was mentioned in the very first video we did in the Atelier was the Draghi report, where he talked about how there needs to be better cohesion in defense industry, right? So, right, it's easy to say that Europeans should take care of European security, and that obviously just by me saying the sentence, you would think, oh, well, that's just simple logic. But it's the reality is a lot more complicated than that, right? It's not so simple as just saying that and then, okay, here you go, right?
And that begins with increasing defense spending. 2% is a start, as President Trump has said, but it's not enough. Nor is 3%, nor is 4%, more like 5%. Real investment, real urgency.
Yeah, 5% is just, it's unrealistic. I mean, 5%, you're talking about hundreds of billions of euros for even a small economy, right? And how feasible that is when budget debates for the following year are, yeah, fierce, to put it politely. And I just don't see that happening immediately, but I could be wrong, right? I mean, who knows? But 5% of GDP to defense, yeah, well, we'll see about that.
We can talk all we want about values. Values are important. But you can't shoot values. You can't shoot flags, and you can't shoot strong speeches. There is no replacement for hard power. As much as we may not want to like the world we live in some cases, there's nothing like hard power. It should be obvious that increasing allied European defense spending is critical, as the President of the United States has said. Also critical is expanding our defense industrial base capacity on both sides of the Atlantic. Our dollars, our euros, our pounds must become real capabilities. The U.S. is fully committed under President Trump's leadership to pursue these objectives in the face of today's threats.
So I think that statement also means that it's not enough to just have a lump sum of money and say, okay, well, this is my defense. It's, well, what can that lump sum of money actually translate into? Whether it be shells, right? As we've seen, it was basically the king of battle in the Ukraine war, or they be tanks, or they be actual fighter jets, drones. I mean, what is this money actually buying you, right?
Yesterday, I had a chance to attend the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Today, participated in both the NATO Ministerial and the Ukraine Council. In both, we discussed Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine.
So right there, for much talk about the Trump administration's approach to Ukraine, right? The way they've characterized it as Russia the aggressor, it's a signal, right, to the rest of the allies that, of course, they understand the problem the same way. At least I'd like to believe so, right? Because their actions sometimes differ from the words being said. But that's true of most governments, right? It's just things change. Political realities domestically might compel government officials or politicians to say things that perhaps their actions can't fully match for whatever reason, right? So we have to be cognizant of these things, right? There's not going to be 100% alignment, unfortunately, because that's, yeah, the world's just complicated, right?
I had the chance to brief allies on President Trump's top priority, a diplomatic, peaceful end to this war as quickly as possible in a manner that creates enduring and durable peace. The American Defense Department fully supports the efforts of the Trump administration. And we look to allies to support this important work with leading on Ukraine security assistance now through increased contributions and greater ownership of future security assistance to Ukraine. To that end, I want to thank my UK counterpart, Defense Secretary John Healey, for hosting this Ukraine Defense Contact Group and for his leadership on support of Ukraine. President Trump gave me a clear mission: achieve peace through strength, as well as put America first, our people, our taxpayers, our borders, and our security. We are doing this by reviving the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing deterrence.
I have to delve into what is meant by the warrior ethos, because I'm not really sure what that's meant by, but yeah, okay. It's a military, right? You need that, I suppose.
NATO should pursue these goals as well. NATO is a great alliance, the most successful defense alliance in history. But to endure for the future, our partners must do far more for Europe's defense. We must make NATO great again. It begins with defense spending, but must also include reviving the transatlantic defense industrial base, rapidly fielding emerging technologies, prioritizing readiness and lethality, and establishing real deterrence.
So right there, second mention of the industrial base. So it's if I was an analyst, I would be paying attention to that. So it's a clear signal, right? That's where efforts need to go. And fielding novel technologies, of course, if there are military officials that are working for the benefit of their respective countries, they are paying very close attention to what's going on in Ukraine, right? So we see that drones have taken on like a whole new dimension of war, right?
Finally, I want to close with this. After World War II, first General and then President Eisenhower was one of NATO's strongest supporters. He believed in a strong relationship with Europe. However, by the end of Eisenhower's presidency, even he was concerned that Europe was not shouldering enough of its own defense, nearly making, in Eisenhower's words, quote, a sucker out of Uncle Sam. Well, like President Eisenhower, this administration believes in alliances, deeply believes in alliances. But make no mistake, President Trump will not allow anyone to turn Uncle Sam into Uncle Sucker. Thank you, and we're glad to take some questions.
So I want to say that the world has changed, obviously, since President Eisenhower, and at the time, the European countries that are now part of NATO, and most of them that later joined NATO all the way up to in the 90s, right? They had suffered, I mean, the horrors of World War II, and were in the process of rebuilding. So there was no way, I think, economically, that they could shoulder that burden at that time. Obviously, things have changed, and yeah, it remains to be seen if European countries will be able to muster their political forces together to shake up their respective industrial defense bases, right? To focus their attention, to focus on emerging threats, right? And it's not just state actors, it's also non-state actors, climate change. All these are modern threats that will have consequences, right? And so, yeah, we just have to keep paying attention and see how this debate evolves and whether it actually translates into action. So let me know what you guys think below, and yeah, let's keep the conversation going.